This is the Superintendent's podcast because we still don't have a name. I'm still going with Dinner with Doug, right? And then, we make all this different subjects, different menu items. But we have a special guest today, so I think we should start right
Celebrity.
there. A celebrity guest.
Far from being a celebrity.
No cap. You are a celebrity. It's straight, That's all the slang. We were talking about saying slang. That's like really all I can do.
That's all I know.
Yeah. And I hear my nephew say skibbity, and I have no idea what it means, but I just nod.
I know what that means, but now I forgot because I remember one of my students told me, but I'm like, I can't keep all this in my head.
No, true. So who are you? What are you doing here?
Well, I'm Glavia Smith. I am the METCO director for Wakefield Public Schools, and I've been here for 6 years.
Wonderful. So for people who watch and say, wait, so what's METCO? Is that where they take the kids from Boston? Explain to somebody what METCO is and why it's an awesome program.
All right. So, yes.
You can tell I'm biased, right? Why? Yeah.
So, yes. In the most people say yes to kids from Boston. But METCO is really a revolutionary stance that around education, where in 1960 the purpose was to desegregation schools. So a lot of the schools in Boston, it started with Ruth Batson, and I forgot the other woman's name, where they were having difficulty and also not happy with the level of education that students of color was having in Boston. So they approached Boston School Committee, who were none too happy about their approach of wanting to send kids to different schools. So that's how the Exodus Project started in 1960, in which a couple of towns, I believe Newton and Brookline, Newton, and a couple of other schools were the first couple of schools to have
Lexington, right,
to have students of color go to their school, and that process started with those schools deciding to bus the kids themselves. So that's how METCO started. So it's really a desegregation program to educate kids in the suburban schools.
And so how's the program work? How's it, on a very practical level, like how many METCO students do we have in Wakefield?
Yep.
I remember it from when I was in school. I want to say it was not relatively small, but I assume relatively small at the time. But how's it work? How's it work in Wakefield?
Okay.
And, if you want to criticize Doug, don't worry about it.
No, I don't have no criticism for Doug. Doug and I are friends. We're locked in what the kids say.
Yeah, they locked it. I have no cap.
Appreciate that.
We're locked in. Oh, so how does it work for Wakefield? So Wakefield typically is considered one of the smaller programs. We have about 68 kids.
That's
typically.
Still, we're a small town. 68.
Yeah, 68 is pretty good. But this year we have about 60 kids, and they are spread across all our schools, to the exception of Doyle, but all of them are spread out throughout the district. Currently we have 27 high school, 21 middle school, and about 12 elementary kids, though they're spread out. Typically how it happens is parents have to fill out an application online. It's a lottery system, and I usually meet with our principals to find out what grade levels are available for available seats. So METCO is really, the premise of METCO is a seat availability program. So only if there are seats available in the district, we are able to take a amount of kids. Typically, I usually try to take the number of graduates that I have graduate for the school year.
This might be a dumb question.
No questions is dumb.
She's so good.
She's skilled.
Doug just makes fun of me the whole time. He's kidding, by the way. How does it work on this is such a practical question. So if you're a high schooler or a middle schooler even, and you want to get into theater, or you want to get into marching band, or you want to get into music or sports, how does it work if you have to be at basketball practice at 4 o'clock, or if you're with Tom Bankert and you have to be at the school at 3:30 a.m. I'm exaggerating if anybody's not by much though, just to be fair.
Tom will appreciate this.
Yeah.
3:30 a.m.
Yeah. For a day, they do 3 a days. But in all seriousness, what do you do? And what made me think of it is your shirt. So I don't know if it says worth the ride.
It is, yeah.
But what do you do if you're a kid who wants to be involved in the extracurricular activities that usually go along with schools?
So we work really hard to let our students know if they want to do curriculum activities, it's open to them. We will find a way and work with their parents. So we do have a late bus that we offer to students, but it's typically for our high school students only because when we think about safety, kids' ability to communicate with their parents, it's really a high school level kind of skill set, right? Because I can't imagine a parent who has a student in the 6th grade putting a kid on the late bus, and I don't have access to the driver, and dispatch is usually on a need basis for me to say where exactly is the bus to tell the parent that's where your 6th grader is if the 6th grader doesn't have a phone. Whereas in high school, the bus usually picks around 6 in the afternoon. So it does prove a challenge when we have kids, for example, who's on the basketball team, and let's say we have a half a day.
Mm-hmm.
So school's over at 11, 12 o'clock. I'm usually in the district probably till 2, 3 o'clock, even still then. But when I leave, I'm always like, what are you doing? Like, what's the plan for you? And they're usually here in the district waiting for practice. So this is where we really emphasize to kids the importance of making relationships and having friendships and being able to make a friend that you can spend the day with if possible, so that you can go to their house and kind of wait there. But 9 out of 10 times, most of our kids, they don't want to do that. So they kind of just stick around the school all day until practice, and then they go to practice, and then they'll have a late bus.
That makes sense, and I do wonder if that's somewhere the rec department, the Boys and Girls Club, Wakefield Academy can all put your heads together, put our heads together.
Yeah.
So it's a good point. It's a very good point.
It is.
It's a great point. We've had students volunteer from the program, and students work in our after-school program, and they've been really exceptional with kids. And so we're trying to figure out how to engage students while they're here. And like Glavia said, if a student has an interest, we work to try to find a way to make it happen. And so far, we've been pretty successful with that, and the kids have been flexible as well. But it's not easy. It's not an easy commute, right? It's a big commitment. And after kids kind of fall into that pattern of a schedule, I think they really feel like they're part of the community. And we're working every year to make students feel welcome.
Every year you try to do a little better, right? Every year you try.
That's exactly
so
right.
one year, I think the first year I started is when they really started to have late buses, so which was a plus. One year we were lucky enough one year to run 2 late buses, a 6 o'clock and an 8 o'clock. But again, some of those amenities, I call them amenities now, only because there's the staffing shortage and driving, just a lot of shortage around everywhere. Can impact our ability to really meet the needs of our students. But I think this is where I was challenging my parents, and I was challenging the Wakefield community to understand and also know that the METCO students are Wakefield students. They're not Boston kids going to school in Wakefield. They are Wakefield students, because a lot of our students, when they start school here in the kindergarten, this is the only school district they know. So they're here till 12th grade. They graduate here. So Wakefield is home to them.
Right.
So this is like to have them think that even though they live in Boston, Wakefield is home to them. This is where their friends are at. This is where their community is at. And even for me as a METCO alum, I don't have a lot of Boston friends. I don't. Because my time was spent in Dover. That's where I went to school. That's where I spent most of my time. So any close friends I have are friends that I either made on the bus or people that I knew in Dover.
No, they're a beautiful town too, Dover.
Yeah, it is. Very.
I know, yeah.
Still nice.
It very much is. Well, and I do want to ask, so what does, as we kind of go forward, what does METCO look like? I don't want to say all the problems are solved, because they're not. And I mean, we had a discussion last show too that went a little off the rails. But what does the future of METCO look like? I guess what's it look like going forward? As hopefully we become a better society.
I think that's a bigger question. I always say that's above my pay grade.
So Doug, what's the future?
Not necessarily Doug to answer, but I think as you look at whenever you have a change in administration and you have change of rules, laws that are coming, you always have to really visit about anything around segregation or anything around integration, anything around equity. There's always that attack on it, right? So it's always, why do we need that? Why do we have to have that? But I think people have to keep in the forefront of their mind, it's not adults that need it, kids need it, right? Because the more kids are exposed to different ways of living, different way of thinking, and just someone looking different than them, they only end up being a well-rounded adult and also being able to maneuver the world much better. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a METCO student. I'm born in Haiti. Then I migrated to America when I was 8. And I struggled my whole time. My first school experience was really difficult for me. A lot of bullying, a lot of stuff going on. But I'm grateful that my parents pushed me past that, right? And even being of immigrant background and so on, and having to learn English, it's not an easy task. But I have to say that, METCO made me more ready, right? So when I went to college, it was a predominantly white college. I was okay. I didn't feel like I didn't feel like a deer in headlights. But I also know that not being my community also, that took something away from me also, because I didn't have friends in my community.
No, understood. And it's interesting, and I know we want to get to other topics, but I'm always fascinated by this because it's two issues that are somewhat being resolved, but there's also the upsetting underlying issue. So the one is, again, I like to think that I'm still somewhat young, but even though I'm not, but in 2003 when I graduated, Wakefield, the only people of color I knew were people who were from the METCO program. Not all of, but like a wide majority of people of color in Wakefield were from METCO, and that was it. And there is a benefit to knowing and seeing people who don't look like you and don't have your similar background and can share their experiences. It's how we learn, it's how we grow. I think the underlying policy criticism that I will say is probably above all our pay grades except for Doug's. No, but the underlying issue, right, is METCO was created to resolve a dysfunction in the Boston school systems. And how do you solve, it's not, is there an argument to be made, it's not fair that the kids in Boston can't get the best school system that they deserve, so therefore we have to bust them out of Boston, and how do you fix that issue in Boston?
Yeah.
Right.
Which, by the way, again, we're not going to solve that on a Wakefield podcast.
No.
Right,
But-
but there's an interesting dilemma, that there's an interesting dilemma happening, right, where kids have a really remarkable sense of what is right and just.
True.
They know, especially younger kids, right? They have this really keen sense of what's fair, what isn't, what does it mean to be kind, and what does it mean to be unkind, And as students get into they leave elementary and they get into middle, and then they get into high school, they experience some different things. And what's happening in the outside world, the division that we're seeing, how people are kind of unable to disagree, are unable to work to understand, are unable to be with one another, right? And kind of understand that this isn't a binary of one or the other, right? Many communities are changing. Wakefield is changing.
Yeah.
And as Wakefield is changing, you both used the examples of your experiences when you went to college. You felt prepared because you had an experience. Well, our students that are here are having an experience, and our students are having an experience both in the district and outside of the district, right? And so, and they're really looking to us to help them make sense of this, right? And so, yes, our jobs are to teach. So we often get this question for some people that get concerned about resources and the appropriation of resources. Isn't your job, isn't your role to teach math, science, English, social studies, and then additional subjects? And the answer is yes, of course. But to do what? To be about what, right? Our job is also to teach students to participate in their lives and give them the skills to participate in their lives, right? And to do that, you need to learn how to be with people that are different than yourselves. And so, not to kind of go off on this tangent, but the METCO program, and as the demographic is also changing in Wakefield, helps us and helps students. It's a mutually beneficial exchange. And the program is grant funded, which is amazing. Of course, we don't have enough resources in that space. We would like to have more. When we've hired Glavia is a different director. She won't tell you this, but she's a different director than we've ever had here, right? She is a licensed counselor and a clinician, right? And has really remarkable skill in working with groups, working with students, working with adults, and also has been able to hire other people to come into the program, adults. We've expanded the program to have an adult. Again, these are grant funded positions through METCO, but we have someone at the middle school coordinating and directing kids.
Yep.
We have someone at the elementary school coordinating and directing kids, and so having adults there to be a resource and for students, right, both in district and outside of the district, to have people in their schools that they can identify with that look like they do. It's a win for us. In terms of the big picture for METCO, there's the METCO office in Boston, and things have changed there in the last decade. The Department of Education is more involved now with METCO, and they're partnering more and more together. And a lot of the work of the districts has fallen to the METCO directors, which are leaders like Glavia. So every METCO district has a director. Glavia is the Wakefield director, but she coordinates the program, and she interacts and interfaces with not only her staff that work for the district and the METCO program, but she also kind of interacts and works with students and families as well. So we've grown the program in a lot of ways, but there's still a lot of area for growth for us, one of the areas that we're working on is really thinking about how to support students so that they can participate in different classes, right? So, if a student has an interest in art, how can we support them to participate in AP art classes, right? Like other students. How can we support them to participate in robotics classes like other students? How can we support students to participate in, any number of activities? We're just thinking about how to kind of knock down barriers to help students gain access and be not just gain access, but be successful.
Right.
And so that's one of the things. But we're working on several. But that is one of the things that we're working on now.
But I do want to add that although I think our kids see the METCO office as their office, it's a school office, right? Because I welcome anyone in my office, right? It's like this morning. So yes, I was here late. And there was this young man, he was just, Matthias, I think his name is, he was just walking around, and he poked his head in the office. I was like, hi. He was like, oh, I was just looking for an office tomorrow to do a film project. I'm like, an office? I'm like with people in it? And he was like, no, I just need the space. I said, all right, well, what time you coming? He was like, oh, like 9:38. I said, all right, so I'll see you tomorrow. I said, but I do have meetings in here tomorrow, so I'm going to need you to be quiet with your team. So, like around 9:45, there's like 6 of them that showed up. He told me there was only 2 of them.
Yeah.
So 6 of them showed up. I'm like, okay, well, you guys, I have a Zoom call. So next thing I know, my lights are off. I'm like, oh, you guys need my office, I'm like, but I need to be on the Zoom call. So part of the story is that through those kind of interactions, his other friends learn of the METCO's office space, right? And I'm like, come back. I don't be using me, and then you don't come back here. So it's really about being accessible not only to our METCO kids, but to other students, because the truth is all our students need a trusting adult, and the trusting adult doesn't have to be a teacher.
It's true.
It doesn't have to be.
True.
It doesn't have to be someone that's in interfacing every day with them, because sometimes it's that one interaction with a student that can make them come back when they're having a hard time.
It's true. Nothing matters more than just having that relationship with an adult. It's I couldn't agree with you more. And we're lucky in Wakefield. We have a lot. I mean, we talk about everything from banker to Coach Ross and whatnot. All right. So You're more than welcome to stay with us, by the way.
Sure,
We're gonna
why
go
not?
through-
Let me
is
get a
that okay?
conversation.
Yeah,
Is that okay
no,
with
that'd
you?
be great.
'Cause we do have
I think
a
she's
few-
ready. She's ready for her own podcast.
Yeah, we could. We definitely do it. If you ever want to bring any of your kids on, let me know. We'll
Oh,
do
sure, I'll do that. Okay, I'll let them know. They would love that. They love to hear themselves and see themselves, you know?
We can make that
And
work.
and we've had some students on from the program before.
Oh, wonderful. So, all right. So,
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think there's, so at least in my mind, right, as a representative of the people. No, there's the two issues that I think that have come up a lot, at least I hear people talking about, is one is the start times.
Yep.
And two is the cybersecurity issue that happened.
Yep.
Why don't we talk about the cybersecurity one first? Just because I think it'll be quicker, and then we'll go into start times.
Great.
And then we'll talk about whatever else is on your mind.
Yeah. So we were informed by Power School, right? Power School is our student information system. And so it's a database that we use for scheduling, for enrollment, right? That includes scheduling, grades, attendance, data. And so we use it. And I've learned during this process that Power School serves 440 schools across the country.
Wow.
And so I also recently learned that they were recently acquired by a private equity company for, I think, $5 billion. And I mention that because in their correspondence with this data breach, it feels like we're dealing with like big pharma, right? Like you got the response felt very technical and not very personal. It didn't leave us kind of warm feeling like, oh, they got it. It felt more like a legal statement than anything else. We've since kind of been in touch with Power School, and they're kind of working with all of the districts and schools across the country. But it looks like there was a hack in the database that included information around student names, addresses, email addresses, and so and a few other data points. There was no social security numbers or financial information
Which I think is huge.
disclosed,
That last part, yeah.
which is huge. But young kids don't generally have that information when we're enrolling. We don't include that in the process. There's also teacher information that was breached as well, similar. Name, email addresses, phone numbers. And so a lot of that information is public, which is true. We were also told by Power School that this was not a ransomware hack. However, we've learned that they did pay a ransom to have the information reportedly deleted. Now, and we also have been informed that the hack has come from an Eastern Bloc country, and so which is not uncommon in international hacking. But we are working pretty closely with our tech team in district, and we're also working we have a cybersecurity vendor that works with us. So Jeff Weiner is our director of technology, sent a note today, and he said, he and his team I was impressed by this. They're replicating the hack to verify the information that was reportedly accessed, right? And so they're working on that right now. And so the company Power School has also let kind of their commercial users know, we are one, that they're going to be working and getting out additional information to offer monitoring software for anyone that might have been impacted. But they're also quick to let us know that the ransomware that they paid, or the monies that they paid, they were reassured that all of the data was deleted. Now, as an objective person, and sometimes as someone that can be a little curious and critical, I don't know what the check and balance would be technically to know that the data has in fact been deleted. And often when, companies have data breaches and they reach out to you and say, Mr. Lyons, we're sorry your data's been breached and would like to offer you monitoring software, because you're so distrusting that your data has been breached once, often people don't participate in the offer or take advantage of the monitoring that they're offering. So we are working with, trusting the information that they're giving us, but really working hard to verify what they're telling us, right? And so that's where we're at right now. We're going to put a general note out this afternoon and invite anyone that has any additional questions to please be in touch with us. I did 2 calls this morning with a couple of parents that were interested to talk this through, and we did that. And as we learn more, we'll get that additional information out. But we are, there's some irony in this because we have been working, Jeff and his team have been working on a cybersecurity initiative and working with, they call it second factor authentication. You adults often see it when you log into your bank account and they say, we're going to send you a text with a number, and so we're kind of doing that right now with staff. But it raises the question, how can we add an additional layer for students, right? Obviously, young students aren't going to be able to provide a second level of authentication. But the questions we need to kind of figure out, are there other ways to make sure that kids are secure? And those are things that we're working on. So we're again, cautiously working hard to verify the information that we're being given, so to understand that it's accurate and to really be thoughtful about how we can respond and support students whose information has been breached, as well as adults, please. Yeah.
No, understood, and it's so interesting, and it's so sophisticated now, some of the hacks. So a little bit, a lot of people know I have a law practice, and we go through a variety of trainings and initiatives, and so much it's 2 things you have to worry about, and it sounds like this is the latter. The former is your credit card info is stolen, right? Or your social security is stolen, and they can then therefore open it. It's access to funds.
Yep.
The second, and this is where this situation is the ability, it seems, to try to mirror someone to get funds later.
Yep.
Right? So you have a student's email address, you have a student's name, and therefore you can try to email grandma and say, hey, so can I get some? So you're not, to a certain extent,
we don't have any evidence that that's happening right now.
No.
So
Just to be clear, that's not happening. But the one reassurance I'll give you is the students themselves probably wouldn't be harmed because there's nothing that can be gained, in terms of financial information, in terms of social security number, in terms of creating a fake ID. However, somebody may try to use that info.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's where you just have to tell everybody to always be careful. No matter what. Last topic, because I know we're getting to 30 minutes of last topic of the day, but a big one,
Hot
in a
topic.
good way, is start times.
Yeah.
And I know, in brief, looking to do the flip, I guess, where the elementary school kids would start earlier.
No.
Wrong.
Yeah.
Start later. Did I say earlier? I'm sorry.
Well, yeah.
Elementary school kids would start later, and middle and high school would start earlier. I'm saying, you know what? Shut up. I'm going to shut up. You just go. I'm going to shut up. I need coffee, guys.
Right.
I know I literally just said it wrong as I was saying it.
So let me just be clear here. We're hosting a community forum next Thursday night at Galvin, and it's the second community forum that we're having of 3. The first community forum, we invited a scientist and a doctor to come in and talk about the science of sleep and the benefits of later school start times, right? So next week will be a second opportunity to invite any members of the community and any members of our faculty and staff to attend if they so wish, to come in. And what we're going to do is we're just going to talk about a context of the work and the goal of these 3 forums. So the first forum was to look at the science. The second forum was to just hear from the community what their questions are. Some things we have answers to, many we do not. Many of these things we do not yet have answers to. The third forum will be to actually invite extracurricular leaders, rec department, our athletic director, Tom Bankert, Fine and Performing Arts, to come in to talk about how a later start time could impact all of those schedules, right? And to start this process, the school committee, and to create probably a longer look or a context for this, back in 2015, superintendents in the Middlesex League, and at that time I was the assistant superintendent, Kim Smith was here, Kim and the other 11 superintendents in the Middlesex League all kind of signed off on a letter of their intent to look into a later start time, and to explore the possibility of it and make the change if they could. There are 12 districts in the Middlesex League. We are one of the 12. Right now, 10 of the districts have made a later start time for their high schools, right?
Which makes sense, by the way.
Right. And so, and I think it does make sense. And the reason, that the doctor who was in described it like this, she said, younger kids, elementary through grade 5, 6, some in 7, have some flexibility. They can go to bed early or late and still get up early, right? High school kids often will stay up late, but often want to sleep later, right? So there's no panacea. There's no magic potion here. This is not going to, increase student sleep time by 3 or 4 hours, right? This is just going to change their schedules to give them more time in the morning. For many, it will add to some additional sleep. Maybe not all of the hours that they need, but it's a gesture, right? And so the work that we're doing is to have these 3 forums, to collect information, to make a recommendation to the school committee, because it is the school committee's responsibility to establish start and end times under the contract, right? So the school committee will have the final say here, right? They will vote. We will make a recommendation. We will likely make 3 recommendations, and it will be, option A, we'd like to pitch these later start times and because there's a little bit of a Sudoku problem happening within that proposal, because we use the same number of buses for elementary, middle, and high. So to continue in that footprint, you have to kind of have about the same splits that you have now in start times for schools.
I have to do my Wordle, by the way. The Sudoku reference just reminded me.
Right. So what we would do is, proposal 1 might be, we propose that the elementary, middle, and high change in these ways. That might be option A. Option B might be more minutes or less minutes and different levels. And option C might be no change. And at the end of the day, we're presenting this information to school committee, and school committee is going to say, yes, Doug, we'd like you to move forward and build schedules to represent that change. And my next ask from school committee is going to say, could we please work together with the labor subcommittee to negotiate this with the Wakefield Educators Association, because it has to be impact bargained, right? And so no change is going to happen unless it's bargained. And so we're going to make a proposal. School committee is going to take one of those 3 proposals, change A, change B, or no change, and then we're going to move forward. The next part of that is bargaining with the union about how personnel are going to be impacted, and then what do we do about that? And so the timeline on this, so if the school committee votes to make a change, what I would recommend is that we make the change in September of 26, not 25. So it would give us essentially a year and a half, a little shy of a year and a half, and it would align with our kind of move into the new high school.
That makes sense. Sorry.
No, just one more part, because there's going to have to be a new student schedule at the new high school, because it's a different size school, which is going to require us to change the schedule slightly that we have now in place, which is going to have to be bargained anyway. So a lot of the things that I'm describing are going to need to be addressed. But there are a lot of technical issues. There are a lot of moving parts to kind of changing the start and end time to the school day. However, many districts have done it, and there's no reason why we can't do it. I think what we're kind of looking at now is some of the districts have made very small changes in minutes. Instead of starting at 7:30, they start at 7:50 or 8 o'clock. That doesn't seem to line up with what the science is advising about the times kids need at the
No,
secondary
that's,
level. So, I mean, so it's kind of we're weighing. It's like a cost-benefit
Well,
analysis.
And let me just say, from my personal point of view, right? My son actually, the current schedule is perfect for us.
Yeah.
It's ideal,
Yeah.
right? So the change actually would negatively impact my family and I. But you can't tell me, and this is where people get frustrated with government, right? And they get frustrated with public policy. I think we've had a discussion about this before. Everybody knows that high school and teenagers should start later than 7:05 or whatever.
Right, yeah, 7:30.
7:30, right? Everybody knows it.
Yeah.
But we don't do anything about it because it's just too difficult to change. So therefore we stick. Like we know that the school day, how it's set up, is ridiculous. Everybody will agree with it, right? So nobody wants to change it though because it's too hard. And it's like at a certain point, the frustration with government is that nothing happens. Well, how you change that is by making something happen.
Right.
And this, to me, seems like a common sense. And you know, you'll go on Facebook and you'll read the comments of, well, my work day starts here, or I have to find extra childcare. And a part of me wants to say, yes, but if the school department can't start worrying about everybody's work day,
yeah,
like, your job has to be, like, what were you going to do when your kid was at a different school? You know, your job has to be what's best for the kids, what educates them best. And then, sorry, it's on the family then to figure it out. You know, I pay my taxes for you to provide the best education for my child possible, not to be amendable to my work schedule. Don't worry about my work schedule. I'll worry about my work schedule. You worry about educating my kid to the best ability.
But I do want to add, when we're talking about those things, we have to think about equity. We have to think about our families that do not have that kind of flexibility in their job, right? So we have families where if they have to work 2 jobs to keep the lights on and their kids are kind of like self-daycare, who is watching these kids if the school day starts at 8:40 and everybody got to be at work at 8:20? So just to keep in mind that as Wakefield grows, Wakefield's population is changing, Wakefield's families are changing.
We got to bring her more.
So as we think about, and even when we do these forums, I think we really have to, and this could be an offline discussion.
No, sure.
About the language capacity this is being communicated to families, because we do have families where we have their students as EL students. So the question is, how much of it are they understanding in their own language or in another language to understand that this is something that the school is doing, is coming down the pipeline, for them to start thinking about, if school times are changing, what does that mean for our family, and then their ability to meet things. So we also have to keep equity in mind now that Wakefield is looking different.
I think it's a great point, and I think, if I can just add, I believe.
I have an idea, but I don't want Estelle to get mad at me.
Well, hold that thought for a second. I do believe that WCAT has access. So this was accessible via Zoom, and I do think WCAT has the ability to change language access.
Perfect.
So we're hoping that can kind of create or connect with different communities and students that we serve. Another piece that we're looking at is how other districts, so I've shared that the 10 of the 12 districts have made changes in the Middlesex League. Some of those changes have gone pretty well. Some have not. And we have learned or are learning from other districts. We've, have met with some other superintendents to talk about and have asked them to report when you've made this change, what has gone well, what hasn't, right? And I think the communication piece is really important, which I think the additional time will allow us to kind of get the word out if we're going to make a change. Mm-hmm. The other things that we're learning is, and I'll bring this up, I know Glavia might not, is if students are getting on a bus in Boston at 6 a.m. and to start school at 7:30, and they're going home at 3 to get home at 4:30, what does this mean for their day, right? And so we've looked at other districts that have tried to be thoughtful about how it impacts all students, right? All students that are enrolled in the schools. I want to be clear. But your point, Anthony, I think is a really important one. If we're trying to accommodate everybody, well, let's just start off by saying that's not possible. we're trying, this recommendation is made to accommodate and support as many students as we possibly can. Some group or someone might not particularly care for a little bit of an earlier start or a little bit later start. And that's where a school committee needs to think about, is this something that we as a district feel like is critical for us to do? You know, my advocacy is if 10 districts have been able to do it and it has worked for kids and families, that those 10 districts have worked through it. There's no reason why Wakefield couldn't if they so desired. But again, to be thoughtful, to do it thoughtfully, and to take time and to have these forums, we're also the only districts, I think, that are kind of giving not only this time to hearing and getting feedback, but we're also kind of attaching another timeline to it to thoughtfully negotiate with our employees, right? To make sure that we are being thoughtful to hear their concerns. But again, a starting point, there has to be a value. Like, so what is the value add? The value add is this has the potential to be good for students, especially students at the high school level. That's the value. That's the goal. And if at the end of the day, the adults feel like, yeah, we got this, then we'll work through each challenge and we'll go from there.
No, agreed. And I want to be cognizant that it's 40 minutes in, and I don't know how many people like to watch us for that long. But do we have any other comments, anything to talk about until the next one?
No, I think next time, we're going to talk a little bit about hopefully vision of a graduate and NEASC, because the high school has had an accreditation team in and have gotten some really great feedback, and they're doing some nice work. And Amy McLeod is doing some really nice work with her teacher leaders around vision of a graduate. And I'd like to invite some students in as well. And so maybe...
And I, like the students, you probably know, like they probably know who I am, and they probably want to, it's probably just there's too much demand to be in the studio with me, and we want to keep the excitement down. I get it. So I'll bring my Sharpie so I can autograph things for them if they...
I'm sure they'll be waiting for that.
Yeah. So, but in all seriousness, thank you. It was awesome having you. We do miss Kara, but it was wonderful having you.
I'll tell her that. I'm like, you're waiting for her patiently.
No. And always, tell her the show's still going.
It's on podcast probation.
Yeah. Thank you to WCAT as always, too. Thank you.
As always.
Ian and everybody. And, Ian does, just so people know, Ian goes above and beyond. He reaches out to us and says, hey, let's do this again. I'm getting good feedback. And I do. People come up to me and talk to me about it. And I'm like, oh, you watched? I thought it was only my mom. So guys, thank you so much. And we'll talk soon.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.